My name's Will DeFries, and this is the Sunday Scaries podcast, your cure for the Sunday blues. This week we have a very special guest. It's someone that I've spent a lot of time with, whether she knows it or not, but her name's Aditi Shah, and she is a Peloton meditation and yoga instructor. I first discovered her when I was dipping into meditation for the first time on the Peloton app, and ever since I've taken a lot of her classes. It seemed like a very natural person for me to reach out to in order to do an episode for, a beginner's guide to yoga and meditation, and luckily for me, she obliged. Through our conversation, you'll see that I asked a lot of questions that could be described as beginner, but that was kind of the intention with this. I think during this time, more than ever, we could all use a little meditation, a little solitude. And so I hope you get as much out of this as I did. Before we get started, I do want to talk about our sponsor for this week's episode, onecorestore.com. They offer a variety of products for you and your pets. They are proud to offer Green Road CBD products. And if you're not familiar with CBD, you should be by now. It can potentially help you with anxiety, stress, sleep, pain management, and more. All Green Road CBD products are made for 100% fully traceable USA hemp, and they're compounded by licensed, experienced pharmacists. They're really great. To be completely honest, they sent me a large box with several of their products in it, and I've used a lot of them, whether it was gummies that I was using in an effort to hopefully stop some aches and pains that I was having, or some tinctures that I was using for sleep. I've been impressed with every single product. They offer most of their products with no THC, but they also offer full spectrum and broad spectrum CBD oils for those looking for additional ingredients with THC up to the legal limit. When you compare One Core Store products to the products of the same quality, potency, and purity, you'll see that they are much less expensive for the high quality products. One Core Store has been fortunate that 90% of their customers return for additional products, and they've been providing products that make a difference in people's lives since 2016, and they'd like to do the same for you. To go to their website, just please visit onecorestore.com/scaries for an introductory offer of an additional 10% off their already low prices. Again, that's onecorestore.com/scaries for an introductory offer at an additional 10% off of their low prices. But without further ado, Aditi Shah. Well, Aditi, thank you so much for joining us. I know that I'm very familiar with you. I've spent numerous hours listening to your meditations on Peloton, and I'm sure that some of the listeners have too. Can you explain how you ended up at Peloton and kind of your journey leading up to that?
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, first of all, for having me. So I ended up at Peloton. I was a yoga and meditation teacher in New York City. I mean, I still am, but just on a different platform. And really, I had a lot of exposure to these practices growing up. It became something that became important to me a little bit later in life, starting in college and then after that. And I would say after college is when I decided to become a teacher, and we can get a little bit more into that later. But I was just a teacher in New York City, and that's basically how I ended up at Peloton. Peloton decided that they wanted to start a yoga program. They obviously started with the bike, and then they added the tread and strength, and they decided to, add yoga, and that's where I came in.
I've been truly enjoying the meditation side of it. It wasn't a side of the Peloton that I thought that I would get into, but it's been almost in my routine as much as the rides. And so
That's awesome.
that's how I found you. You had a meditation and I was like, that looks good. Let's do that. And then all of a sudden I was like 10 classes deep with you. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm kind of,
I meditate now.
yeah, I'm hitching my wagon to Aditi. And then, yeah.
That's awesome.
You said that you've been practicing meditation and yoga from an early age, even though you haven't been, teaching it for that long. How did that happen? I don't think it's all that common these days for yoga and meditation to be kind of at the forefront when you're that young.
Totally. I wouldn't say, to be honest, that it was at the forefront, but it was just something that was kind of introduced to me. So I grew up in New Jersey, but my parents grew up in India. And, I think they saw yoga in a different lens than we do now.
Mm-hmm.
So once in a while, they would have yoga teachers come to our home, which is, a kind of normal, common thing, I think, in India. Like, to have a teacher come to your home as opposed to go to a studio. I think studios are still a newer concept in India. So for them, that was kind of that's normal. So they would have yoga teachers come to our home, and we wouldn't practice necessarily the kind of yoga that you might take on the Peloton app rather. You would practice kind of like maybe a slower practice that involved a lot of longer holds and breathing, and a little bit of meditation. So I was just like kind of exposed to it in that way because that's what I thought yoga was too. So that's kind of that was what I thought it was. And I was not really inclined towards it because I was a kid who really liked to like run around. And, I played soccer and I used to run, and I was like one of those like barefoot outside people who like climb trees. So I just like, yoga wasn't really my jam when I was growing up, but I just like kind of knew about it. I will say though that meditation and the worldview and like the philosophy behind yoga and meditation, I'm lucky to have a lot of exposure to because of my culture and like our spirituality. Like there's just a lot of similarities, and there's an understanding of a different way of seeing the world and thinking that exists in yoga or in meditation, even if, it's completely non-religious, but these kind of concepts exist in the Eastern world in many different ways. So I was exposed to that. And for example, I think one of my first meditation practices was with a sadhvi, which is kind of like, a monk kind of person. And literally like she was just teaching us to focus on our breath. And I really, really struggled. I was a teenager maybe. And she was kind of telling us to count our breaths and not get distracted by our thoughts. You were trying to see how many breaths you could count. It was really tough. Yeah. But I think just the idea of those concepts kind of made their way into my mind at a younger age than maybe a lot of us. And I think now it's really awesome to see that a lot of parents are introducing their kids to yoga and meditation, at least mindfulness practices at a younger age, which is really cool. And I think can help people build really healthy habits like growing up. But yeah, I was exposed to it, and I had that kind of background and understanding, which really helped when I decided to really dive deep into yoga. And it started with, I stopped kind of being as involved in sports as I was. I still was running, but I was like anxious and I was looking for something. And I kind of, at that time went into like the internet rabbit hole of yoga, and I found Rodney Yee and David Swenson, and I just explored and tried a lot of different yoga, and I realized, I found some things that resonated with me, and I realized that just practicing was really making me feel better. So I stuck with it. And as I practiced yoga, I started to understand more about it, which led me to meditation, which, I did the same thing. I think it's important to experiment. So I just like found what worked for me and stuck with it.
How did you go from just practicing to being a teacher? You mentioned that it was kind of a jump that you made later.
It was. I really loved practicing. I remember when I was like, so I went to college and I studied math. And I worked really briefly at an investment bank, and I thought that I would like not be able to manage if that was going to be my whole life. So I quit. Yeah. And my parents, they retired and moved back to India. So they were living in India at this time. And so I went to India because that's where my like only home was. I didn't have another place to go home to. And I didn't know what to do with my life. I was like baking a lot and doing a lot of yoga. And my mom was like, maybe you should open a yoga school. It seems like you're really into this. And I was like, no, I would never want to like teach. I just love practicing. I want to keep it to myself. Yeah. And, I started on a completely different career path, but in the back of my mind, I was like, when I get older, I want to open a yoga studio. I think that's like going to be maybe part of my retirement plan. Yeah. And I was like, well, if I want to do that, I probably should like learn more about yoga. So I started, with my teachers in India, I would start like just having sessions where I got to like learn more about the philosophy and the history. And then I was like, maybe I should do a teacher training because I think that would be important to like understand more. Maybe I could like get hired at a studio to see how the studio is run. And I did the teacher training, and that's really the thing that changed me. I think I I really enjoyed teaching, and it was something that I really loved, and I saw how impactful it could be to share it. And um, I just decided to go for it. I honestly, I came to New York with half a suitcase full of clothes, planning on going back to India, and abruptly changed my mind because that teacher training had such a big impact on me. I was like, I think I'm going to stay here and do this.
Yeah.
And I
I didn't
did.
realize that you had, been in like investment banking and taken that kind of leap. That's pretty
I
cool.
mean, it was really not a choice for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's understandable. As somebody who has never wanted to kind of go with the status quo and go that way, I totally understand where you're coming from. I first started meditating a couple years ago after I got some advice from a couple friends who said that instead of listening to podcasts in the morning on their way to work, they started meditating. And I kind of didn't totally have a routine with it. I just kind of did what a lot of people do. I downloaded a couple apps, took some free stuff, figured it out. And it wasn't until the quarantine that I decided that it was something that I wanted to try to make into something that was more of a staple of my routine. I figured there was no better time than now. I was kind of stuck in my apartment. I could use those periods of time to kind of take myself somewhere else and get an escape. What purpose do you see meditation serving throughout this quarantine and throughout this time when there might be this overwhelming kind of dread for a lot of people?
Okay, so I'm gonna actually, this might not be a popular answer,
Yeah.
but I think it's like kind of that fix the roof while the sun is shining kind of thing,
Hmm.
where I think the best time to have started a practice is probably a little bit before the quarantine, because then you'd have some tools developed to handle the quarantine. That
Yeah.
said, this is a great time because at any point of the practice, like you are going to get the benefits of the practice. But I think that meditation, especially mindfulness-based meditation, is really helpful in helping you change your relationship to your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts. And so, in a time when the world is in a uncomfortable place for most of us, or at least a place that is rather unusual, um, I think our emotions and feelings and thoughts are uncharted territory, right?
Hmm.
And so having a practice that helps you really understand how you want to relate to yourself, is such a gift. And I think, like, okay, if you've started now, you've probably started to really feel these benefits, and continuing to cultivate them will only help, right? So that when the quarantine ends and we all go back to work or whatever life looks like, then there's just a little bit more resilience built up. There's a little bit more space in between your thoughts and your actions, your feelings, and how you kind of take in the world.
Hmm.
Um, I think also that it can offer a lot of space to start to relate to, yeah, to kind of like give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling,
Hmm.
give yourself permission to be with what's happening. I think there's like often for all of us, like when things are not what we're expecting, or things are not what we would like, no matter how spontaneous you are, I feel like in a situation like this, it's like when it's not something you're expecting, there can be a reaction to kind of be like, not push against it, right? To not be comfortable, to
Yeah.
just like, and then also to try your best to be okay, which is definitely like something we all have to do. But I think that meditation offers a space for you to be like, okay, like it's okay if I don't feel okay today, and still I can still do my best with the day. And I think it kind of like gives you the space to feel like, well, this feeling is like one small part of this wave, like this ocean of life, right? It's like one wave in this ocean of like my feelings. So I think that it's helpful both in the moment right now, but also as a long-term practice. It has like huge benefits that hopefully we all start to kind of build now, because there's now is like a time when we're realizing like that we really might need it.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, people are realizing the value that it can bring, even if they are a little late to the game when it comes to actually implementing it.
I
But
think that's totally okay.
yeah,
Also, like,
yeah,
I don't mean to say that like you had to start before. I just think that now is the time when you can realize the value so much more.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. And as somebody who wish I would have made it my routine before this. Like it's just the kind of thing that's like, well, I guess I'm kind of forcing my hand now. So, we do have a lot of listeners who have asked me questions about meditation in the past because I've mentioned that I've been trying to implement it more in my life. Unfortunately, because I am so new to it even now still, I haven't really been able to answer those questions well. And so for the first time ever, I've asked the listeners to kind of relay some questions to you. I hope these aren't too, I don't want to say low level, but I mean, these are pretty beginner intro questions that I think I had and a lot of other people have had.
No, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. The first one is, what is a good session length for someone who's just starting out?
I think 10 minutes is a good place to start. I think more important than the length of your practice is the consistency.
Hmm.
If you can find 10 minutes, but do it every day, I think that's like a much better practice than, taking 1 week of a year to go to a meditation retreat kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think, and if 10 minutes is too much, maybe 7, but I personally think 10 minutes is a great place to start. On the Peloton app, we have a lot of little 5-minute basics, like meditation basics classes, which are great for starting to understand the different kinds of classes that are offered on there and give you an introduction if you're like brand new and trying to learn what you want to do. But I personally think that it takes a few minutes to get into it. It
Hmm.
takes a few minutes to get into like, okay, I'm relaxed in my body now. And like now I'm going to really focus on the mindfulness part. So I feel like, yeah, if possible, a 10-minute meditation is a good place to be.
Yeah. I think that 10 minutes is usually where I skew to. And then unless I have a lot more time or I know that I'm not going to have any distractions. And I know exactly what you're talking about when you say that it takes a couple minutes to get into. And one of the things that I always appreciate, especially later in a meditation, is when it's said that you don't, if your mind drifts, don't worry about it. Just, cherish the moment when you get back. And it's always that kind of recurring thing for me where I'm like, oh shoot, my mind's drifting, and I like beat myself up a little bit, and I'm trying to get out of that.
Totally. I think that that's super normal, and I don't think that it ever changes. I think like the mind drifting, I think you have to treat it as an opportunity, right? Like that is the thing that like your meditation practice is.
Hmm.
It's the bringing it back. That's what the practice is. The practice is like that rerouting of your mind back to whatever you're focusing on. And the more you do it, like it's like, anything else. It's like you're strengthening that meditation muscle. So I think like you wouldn't beat yourself up if you were learning, anything else. I think it's kind of the same.
Yeah, I think there's the expectation that you need to like immediately be good at it just because you want to be. But yeah, it does kind of feel like you're learning something different as opposed to like a different skill where you do have that trial and error. Um,
Totally.
so you kind of answered this in your first answer, but how often do you recommend meditating? You said every day would be better than just doing like some quick ones or whatever, a yoga retreat. Do you have any tips for beginners in that respect?
Yeah. Okay. So I think when you're starting out the practice, it's really, really, really important to remember that consistency is like it is the most important part of it. Like you might have a great practice one day and then spend the next day just like totally planning your grocery list, and that's normal and okay, but it doesn't matter. Like the most important part I think of building a practice is practicing.
Yeah.
So if possible, I think there are a couple things that help me. Plan a time that you can be consistent with, whether that's in the morning or at night. I think for most of us, it's one of those, but I know for sure some people use their like transit time on the train or something like that. So whatever your time is, like plan that time and try to be consistent with it. One of the things that can help with that is habit stacking, which is kind of like if you have one habit, you just add this onto it. So it's like every day I brush my teeth, and right after brushing my teeth, I always meditate. Like
Hmm.
that's your stack. Um, I think it can be helpful to find a space that is, and I know it's not possible for everybody, but if it's possible to find a small space that's like this is your meditation space, that when you go there, it kind of is like this is what you do here, right? So whether it's just like a cushion in a corner, or it's like if you have a lot of space, you can set up like a little it doesn't have to be an altar, but altar type of situation. Um, I think it can be just really nice to be like, okay, this is not the place where I go to do all the other things. This is my place to meditate. And it kind of puts you in the right headspace to start. I really feel like it's really best to meditate at a time of day or like a moment of your, day when you know that you're not going to be really disturbed by a lot of other things, right? You're not going to like, hopefully it's not after you check your email, right?
Yeah.
Like, because for me, it's like I check my email and then I have thoughts, and then maybe like something like affects my mood in one way or another. And it's like, okay, like find a place where you can really like kind of turn off. So that's why I say for most of us, it's usually early in the morning or late at night, because it's like either you haven't checked your email yet, or you're like, I'm done with email now.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be anything else. It doesn't have to just be email, but I think it's important to find the right time, and it'll make you feel more successful too, right? Because like you won't have all those other things going on to distract you, so you can really just take the time. I also think like if you're taking a guided meditation, it'll say the length of it, which is super helpful. But if you decide to try to practice on your own, like setting a timer is hugely helpful because then you're like, well, I'm carving out this 10 minutes for meditation. The timer's going to go off at 10 minutes, so you don't have to like worry about whatever else is happening. You know that at the 10 minutes, like you're going to end and you can go back to your life. Yeah.
So this was another question, when you're starting off, do you recommend taking a guided class or classes beforehand to meditate at home? Or do you see value in kind of self-learning?
I think it's totally up to you when you're starting off. I think there's value in both. I think I personally love taking like a guided meditation with a teacher because it feels like, I know that's a vague term, but it feels like someone's holding space for you, right? It feels like a little bit of less of a lift.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think once you feel comfortable with meditating, like you feel like you kind of have some idea of your inner landscape, I think it's nice to sit on, it feels really good too, to sit by yourself and not have somebody tell you what to do or think, right? Because then you can also just like choose your own adventure, which can be really nice. I think that it's a good thing to start to cultivate over time, because what if you didn't have a guided meditation?
Yeah.
But I certainly don't think it's like, as a beginner, I really don't think it's a necessity. And I don't think it's, I don't think it's a skill that, I would expect anybody to prioritize at the start.
Yeah, that makes sense. So an issue that I've had with starting out, and I know an issue that a lot of other people have had that, submitted this question, is that they have trouble finding that space or that time to meditate because they're in an apartment or they have a roommate and they don't have that quiet time all the time because they just live with another person. I've had that issue because there's an unfair expectation when I want to meditate that I don't want to just tell my wife like, hey, you need to be quiet for the next 15 minutes. And like, that's unfair to her. Do you have any tips for people who are maybe having trouble trying to find their niche and their time to do this?
Well, I think we're all experiencing that right now because we're all in quarantine.
Yeah.
And for me, I obviously like we're all either alone or sharing space with somebody who in a way that you probably weren't used to before. So I think it can be, if you have a partner, I think it can be really helpful to just communicate like that, every day at this time, I'm asking for 10 minutes. I think it's not a crazy ask. And I also feel like, there's some things you can do to make it more manageable for your partner. So it's like, it's probably easier to ask for 10 minutes of quiet earlier in the day than at like when they're trying to have their 9 a.m. Zoom call. Or when we're out of quarantine life, it'll be different. But I think, working around when you think is already going to be a quiet time can be really helpful. I also think carving out a space where it's going to be quiet is like helpful. Finding ways to like, if you have if you have two rooms and someone's like going to be in the other room and you just find you're in your own space meditating, that's an easy way because just ask not to be disturbed. It's not even like they have to be quiet. I also feel, and this may or may not be a popular choice, but you could ask your partner to start a meditation practice with you. You could do it together, and that's actually, it can be really sweet. Not that that's what everybody wants to do, but it's an option. Yeah. And I mean, I would hope that, your family partner, whoever your roommate would just be supportive, of you trying to do something for yourself. Hopefully the people you're living with are supportive of your kind of initiatives for self-improvement, self-health. And yeah, I think if you're mindful of like how much you're asking, it's hopefully something you can work out.
Yeah, I mean, that all sounds pretty reasonable.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Another issue that is a large issue for people, especially people that I've talked to just that I didn't solicit questions from, is that people kind of beat themselves up for not being able to hold their attention throughout. Do you have any advice for people who are worried about that, or do you have any tips for people who are letting that deter them from actually, going all in?
Totally. I think so. When I think about meditation and understanding like the basic philosophy behind it, it comes with two wings. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The first wing is like the noticing what's going on, the observing wing. And the second wing is the non-judgment, the compassion and kindness wing.
Mm-hmm.
And those are both the prerequisites to your meditation practice.
Yeah.
So understanding that compassion and non-judgment are part of the practice is a really helpful tool in navigating this kind of a like an issue, right? Because first of all, there's no real goal, right? It's not like a race where you might have like a goal. There's no finish line at the end of your meditation practice. It's a practice for you to kind of explore. And when your attention drifts and you bring it back, that is actually, if there were a goal, that would be it. It would be the part where you're bringing it back. And the more your attention drifts, the more opportunities you get to start to bring it back, and you're actually kind of strengthening your practice. So it's not necessarily a bad thing for your mind to drift.
Yeah.
Those are the two things I would say are really important to think about when you're starting, is to really do your best to not judge yourself, because it's also going to make it harder to do the practice. Non-judgment and compassion are like the basic kind of precepts here. Mm-hmm. And I know those are things that all of us struggle with in different ways, but even just kind of reminding yourself at the beginning of your practice can be helpful for when you start practicing. And yeah, and the other part is just like that's part of the practice. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, so this is a question, I didn't come up with this question, but this is a question that I've had, and I don't know if this is a foolish question. Like you said, a lot of times people choose early in the morning or late at night. Late at night, and a lot of the meditations on a Peloton are for sleep. If you fall asleep and you're still in the meditation, do you get any benefits from that? Is there any guilt associated with falling asleep during that when you're doing the sleep meditation?
I think it depends on what your goal is. Mm-hmm. So if your goal is to fall asleep, then sounds like a good thing.
Yeah. If
your goal is to develop your meditation practice, it might be helpful to maybe sit up or do something that will help you not fall asleep. I also think most of the time, if you're falling asleep, you're probably tired and you probably need it. And I think it's okay to like forgive yourself. I don't think you need to have guilt about it. Mm-hmm. But I can't say I'm not 100% sure if there's benefits to falling asleep to a meditation. Hopefully you feel more relaxed. I think it can't really be a bad thing. I know a lot of us end up, awake at night because of thoughts. So if meditations are helping you to not have that, I think it's actually really wonderful. But as far as like whether you should or shouldn't be going to sleep during a meditation, yeah, it really depends on why you're doing the meditation.
Yeah. Well, I think those are all pretty good starters for anybody trying to get into it. If you don't mind, let's take a quick break. Let's hear from our sponsors for this week's episode, and we'll come back with some trademark Sunday Scaries questions. This week's episode is also brought to you by Sunbasket. If you're looking to reduce unnecessary trips out or avoid sold-out grocery stores, then check out Sunbasket. It's perfect and delicious, and it's a solution for the times we're living in right now. I have received some Sunbasket in the mail, and I can say wholeheartedly that it's been phenomenal. I got some Moroccan chicken with sweet potato mash, some roasted Tagarashi salmon with miso glazed eggplant, and black bean tostadas Diablo with cabbage slaw and guacamole. If none of those make your mouth water, then I'm not sure what to tell you. If you're unfamiliar with Sunbasket, they deliver healthy, delicious meals straight to your door. They have delicious recipes for all kind of dietary preferences, including paleo, gluten-free, Mediterranean, vegetarian, and more. They make it easy and convenient, and everything is pre-portioned and ready to prep and cook. You can enjoy a full dinner of organic produce and clean ingredients in as little as 15 minutes, no matter how much experience you have in the kitchen. You can order any recipes across their menu, skip a week whenever you need to, or even double up on your favorite recipes. It's simple, easy, with no gotchas. And furthermore, Sunbasket facilities have the highest levels of food and employee safety. They're reinforcing strict adherence to their existing standard operating procedures and increasing sanitation and frequency in the distribution centers in order to protect you and your family. Truly nothing to worry about. Right now, Sunbasket is offering $35 off your order when you go right now to sunbasket.com/scaries and enter promo code SCARIES at checkout. That's sunbasket.com/scaries, SCARIES, and enter promo code SCARIES at checkout for $35 off your order. sunbasket.com/scaries and enter promo code SCARIES. Now, some Sunday questions with Aditi. Let's hop right back in. Let's do some Sunday Scaries questions. You ready?
All right, let's do it. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, what is your ideal Sunday outfit?
I have Sundays off, so I don't have to teach. So I'd probably like to start my day with yoga. If it's not like a day off from physical activity. So starting with yoga pants. Actually, I take Sundays really easy, but one thing that we do on Sundays is host dinner with our friends. We have like Sunday dinners. So I get to dress up in something like decent at night, you know?
Yeah.
Spend the day cooking and wear something like depending on the weather, but cute at the end of the day.
I love that.
Nice.
We used to do family dinners every single Sunday night, and it's not something I do anymore just because I moved, but it's something that I miss all the time. It was always a great way to close down the week.
Yeah.
Do you drink coffee? And if so, how do you take your coffee?
I cycle on and off coffee. I usually drink my coffee black. I mean, I haven't had once in a while, maybe I'll treat myself to a latte, but I'm not really that into lattes. And when I don't drink coffee, it's usually because I'm trying to cycle off of caffeine for a little while, usually like a week or so. And I really like this blend of adaptogens. It's kind of like a tea. It's called Rasa. So that's what I do when I'm not drinking coffee. But I definitely always start my day with something hot, whether it's coffee or non-coffee, coffee alternative.
It's weird. I used to drink coffee every single day, and I've done it for, 13 years, probably since I was about 20. And in quarantine, I've decided that I've just been drinking a lot of tea, and I've kind of been loving it. And so I don't really see myself changing anytime soon. I might need to change the question to how people take their tea.
Yeah, it's nice. And I love tea too.
Yeah.
I'd get it.
If I opened your refrigerator right now, what would I find in it?
Sadly, our refrigerator is empty at the moment. We are going to have to make a grocery run. We like really ate all our food, but usually, I would say we have a few bottles of sparkling water, but we have a soda stream. It's like seltzer water, a non-dairy milk, a lot of veggies, probably some kind of a yogurt or something like that. Sourdough starter because we bake a lot.
See, I need that.
You need that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I got you covered on the sourdough for sure. If you want recipes, I have a lot.
Perfect.
Yeah, maybe definitely leftovers. We definitely are not, or not leftovers, but food prep. We're definitely, I try to like cook foods ahead of time and save them for later. And vegetarian, so there's no meat in my fridge. Yeah, maybe a little boring, but
Yeah,
probably some sauerkraut, pickles, normal stuff.
Yep. See, that once you get in the sauerkraut and pickles territory, that's when my eyes really start to light up. Do you have any Instagram follows right now that you'd recommend?
Well,
this is a hard one.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one because there's a lot. This is going to sound a little silly, but I really love cartoons on Instagram.
Really?
You know? Yes. So I love, there's one called The Awkward Yeti, and he has like all these comics that are like the heart and brain. I know it's like pretty popular now.
I've seen that. Yeah.
I really love Dallas Clayton.
Mm-hmm.
who also has like sketches. I love Katana Comics, which is like it's a couple, and their comics are all about like being a couple, and they're so sweet, so super cute. But I also really like, I don't only follow comics, obviously. I think that if you don't follow Peloton and some of the Peloton instructors, there's a lot of good stuff there. I think yeah, I think those are definitely some good follows. And I actually really love some kind of like people in the functional medicine space.
Mm-hmm.
So David's in the anti-aging space, like David Sinclair. Um, I love, I mean, I love following Joe Rogan, obviously, even though he's not really in that space.
Yeah.
But he interviews all these people.
Yeah, it's great.
Peter Attia. Um, I follow Dave Asprey. Yeah,
There you go.
those are some of my, and Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield, obviously, also, because Tara Brock is my meditation teacher,
Mm-hmm.
who I study with, and she also has a podcast, and they just have a lot of offerings on Instagram that are really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody wants to follow you, where can they follow you?
My Instagram is DITI22, so it's just my first name without the A, and also I have a website, and it's just Aditi Shah Yoga.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's see, it's what's this next one? Oh yes, I'm not sure if this is something you track, but if you do, what does your weekly iPhone screen time look like?
I don't track it, but I'm sure it's too much.
I think that's the general consensus for a lot of
Yeah.
people.
My partner does a good job. He has like a screen time thing that says you've spent you're over your allotted time, so he doesn't spend too much time on it, but
I used to have that.
I'm not as good as he is.
I found myself just disregarding that and just, clicking out
I
of
would
it.
too.
I had to get to I wanted to get to the root of it, and even though I haven't fully gotten to the root of it, I've realized that putting up those filters and those hard stops for me, it doesn't really truly work anymore, because my brain just creates a new routine for itself, and I just start flipping through stuff anyway. So
Yeah. Just makes me feel a little guilty, maybe. When I see his, it makes me feel a little guilty, and then I'm like, whatever. I'm not going to track it, but I do put my phone away at night,
Yeah.
and that's like, I think, a healthy habit. But during the day, I don't limit myself.
I've definitely done more of the just setting my phone on my bedside table and setting it upside down and trying not to look at it until the morning. But
Yeah.
actually, in that same breath, what is on your bedside table?
I have a little, I don't even know what to call it. It's just like a little bowl for like burning Palo Santo or sage or anything like that, which sounds so up the yoga alley, but it's really nice. Also a candle, a book. I have an Aura ring that I use to track my sleep, so that's on my bedside table.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. I try to keep actually I just try to like eliminate distractions in the bedroom. I'm really actually very serious about sleep. That sounds weird, but like I try to take my sleep really seriously. So I don't really have electronics in the bedroom, and yeah.
I mean, that's understandable. I wish I had the control that you have to not have too many electronics in the bedroom, because it's difficult. This is not a question on here, but do you have any favorite candles that you have?
I love oh gosh, I have to remember this name. I might have to tell you later.
Okay.
Because it's a French name and I won't be able to pronounce it. But there is a candle that I really love. I'll email it to you.
I'm gonna take you up. I want to know, and I'm gonna tweet it out to everybody once we do this, because
Okay,
I'm
great.
big on scented candles, and I always kind of like getting recommendations from people.
All right, great.
Final question: what does your ideal Sunday consist of?
Ideal Sunday consists of, I love mornings, so I like to wake up early. I'm not really trying to sleep in, actually, even on a Sunday.
What's early for you?
Well, I mean, on a Sunday, I think I'd probably wake up at like 7:30.
I think that's early for a lot of people on Sundays.
Yeah, for Sunday, right?
Yeah.
But I like that. So I like to wake up early. I like to, if possible, practice yoga. I am like careful about not overdoing it. So it really depends on that. But I love starting my day with a cup of coffee, a big glass of water, and yoga. And then after yoga, I do a little breathing and meditation. and then I kind of start my day after that.
Hmm.
I love brunch with my partner, just like cooking. And then yeah, so very often, obviously not lately, and we took a pause because we were wedding planning, but uh we would be kind of spending Sunday cooking, which was really nice because
Yeah.
I think I like throw things together on the weekdays, but on the weekends, like, is an opportunity to like really cook. So lately we've been baking a lot, but usually on Sundays is when we would bake bread and make like a big meal to share with all our friends. And we'd have our friends over for like a Sunday, like you said, like a family dinner, but like, with our friends. So like, set up the apartment and do that and hang out. That's pretty ideal Sunday
I mean, that
for
sounds
me.
pretty ideal and pleasant to me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on and taking time. I'm probably going to meditate with you later today. Do you have,
Awesome.
you already kind of did this, but if people want to do your meditations, if people want to follow you, if whatever it is you want to plug, now's your time.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram. Send me all of your questions. I'd love to kind of like be on this journey with you, and definitely download if you haven't yet. Peloton Digital is free for 90 days. So there's really, no excuse. Start your meditation practice and your yoga, your strength, your running, your cycling, whatever it is that you're, wanting to do. Now is definitely the time. So check it out.
If you liked what you heard today, make sure to subscribe, review, or tell a friend in need about this podcast. By subscribing, you guarantee that each and every episode gets delivered directly to your phone every Sunday morning. You can also follow along on Twitter at Sunday Scaries and Instagram, which is at Sunday.Scaries, or you can follow me on both Twitter and Instagram at Will DeFreeze. And remember, always trim the wicks on your scented candles. See you next Sunday.